like you're middle fingering this guy. That sounded really bad. Thornhill, sexuality educator. Welcome to my recap and review of Handmaid's Tale, Season 3, Episode 8, Unfit. Before we dig deep into this episode, I invite you to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and that's a thing you're interested in doing. Just click the subscribe button down below. As always, we kick things off with a rapid recap. The episode begins with a handmaid named Of Andy giving birth and June auditioning for the role of Regina George in Mean Girls. Aunt Lydia does not appreciate June's lip, but instead of smacking her upside the head, she puts her in the shame circle. Not wanting to be the only one who is shame circled, June kind of lies and tells everyone that Of Matthew doesn't want her baby. We flash back to pre-Gilead times when Aunt Lydia was a teacher named Miss Clemens who loved kids, judged mothers, made a mean chili, and was feeling the principal. Back in the present, Aunt Lydia gives June some brownie points for snitching on Of Matthew. June returns to Lawrence Manor where she demands that Commander Lawrence tell her where Hannah is. Unfortunately, he knows nothing. Of Andy gives birth to a baby girl who sadly has died. Well, it's sad to me. Not so sad to June. When June returns to Lawrence Manor, Commander Lawrence asks June to spend more time with Eleanor, and June basically tells him to go fuck himself. Aunt Lydia and her Aunt Force get a little drunk, do some reading, and some handmade matchmaking. In the flashback, Lydia has her student Ryan and his mother Noelle over for Christmas. Lydia gives Ryan a book, and Noelle gives Aunt Lydia the Urban Decay Neutral palette. A week later, Aunt Lydia hits the club for a perfect New Year's Eve karaoke date with the principal. After the date, they head back to Lydia's where she goes straight for that D. When the principal asks Aunt Lydia to slow her roll a little, she is mortified and goes full Aunt Lydia on her reflection in the mirror. Back in present day Gilead, June and the other handmaids continue to be horrible to Of Matthew. Back in Gilead, the weather and Of Matthew are miserable. She and June head to the grocery store where they encounter Aunt Lydia. Aunt Lydia tells June that she's going to be removed from Commander Lawrence's home. June responds to this news by giving Of Matthew a creepy face. Of Matthew goes completely off the rails and starts beating Janine with a can. Of Matthew kills a guardian, grabs his gun, and it looks like she's about to put an end to Aunt Lydia when another guardian shoots her down. The episode ends with Of Matthew being dragged out of the grocery store and June looking on with an expression of pure glee. So now let's get into this episode. I have so many thoughts and so many feelings about how it all went down. As the episode opens, we hear June's voiceover and she is giving us details about Frances. Frances is the woman who was hung last episode. She was Hannah's Martha. Handmaid's Tale continues its tradition of not giving its black female guest characters names or a personality until after they've been killed. I'm also wondering, how does June know anything about Frances? She's spoken to this woman 3 times very briefly, and all of their conversations had to do with Hannah. So how does she suddenly know that this is a woman who was saving up for a trip to the Galapagos Islands when Gilead took power? There's a lot in this episode about shame. And beyond shame, I'd say this episode is about the terrible things that we can do to other people in an attempt to avoid our own feelings of shame. I was so mad at June this entire episode. I hate so many of the things that the writers had her do. But if I look at her actions as the actions of someone who's deeply ashamed, then they at least make a little bit more sense to me. When Janine admonishes June for the way she and the other handmaids are treating Of Matthew, June tells Janine that, Of Matthew got somebody killed and she's not sorry. First of all, Of Matthew didn't get anybody killed. Gilead was the one who lynched and killed Frances. But let's talk about all the ways that June's actions put Frances in a position to be caught and lynched. First of all, June was the one who summoned her to the grocery store for this clandestine meeting for reasons I still don't understand, because June already knew where Hannah's school was. Serena had already told her. June did not lay out a careful, meticulous plan to ensure that, she could see Hannah and also not be discovered or caught. When she took Mrs. Lawrence with her to the school, Mrs. Lawrence announced who she was. June was clearly with her in her handmaid's outfit. It makes sense that the guardian or the administration at the school would have said that, yes, Commander Lawrence's wife showed up with their handmaid, and that people would put two and two together and realize that, oh, that handmaid is Hannah's mother, and put the whole plan together. Hence Frances getting hung. Despite some evidence to the contrary this season, this episode in particular, June has a moral core. The thought that she A, put Frances in this position, and B, inadvertently triggered the Mackenzies' disappearance. They're in, the Gilead Commander Protection Program now. She put the actions in motion that ended in these consequences. June can't bear that shame. And so she is deflecting onto someone who arguably is even more disadvantaged than she is, which is of Matthew. In this scene, Aunt Lydia and the handmaids are coaching of Andy through her labor. They're helping her with her breathing. And at one point, Aunt Lydia says very abruptly, oh, the contractions have stopped. How long was Aunt Lydia waiting before she determined that the contractions had stopped? Because it literally seemed like 2 seconds. I would think you would have to wait several minutes, because there can be several minutes between contractions, before you decide that the labor has stopped. It also struck me as odd that nobody called in a doctor, because last season when June went into labor, or what turned out to be false labor, and her contractions stopped, the doctor came, examined her, and he was the one who said, yeah, this was false labor, the baby's not ready to come. Aunt Lydia approaches June and tells her to tell the other handmaids to cool it with their torment of Matthew. June sass talks Aunt Lydia and is all, well, what are you gonna do to me? Are you going to burn my hand? Are you gonna cut out my tongue? Oh, I hope they don't need me for TV. So, Aunt Lydia doesn't beat June's ass. She takes her back to the Red Center with the other handmaids and puts her in a shame circle. And here's our theme cropping up again. I want to know how the handmaids know when they are meant to respond during the shame circle. Do the pointing and the her fault, her fault, her fault. How do they know how many times to say it? Because it's not consistent. Sometimes they respond 3 times, sometimes it's 7 times, and they're always in perfect unison. How do they know? Aunt Lydia is semi-successful in shaming June, but as soon as June starts to feel those feelings, she rats out of Matthew and is all, Aunt Lydia, of Matthew doesn't want her baby. No, she never said that to you. You said to her that sometimes during your pregnancy, you had thoughts that you were ashamed of, and she shut you down. Rightly so, because all you do, June, is get black women shame circled and then killed. Shout out to Ashley Lathorpe, who plays of Matthew. Acting is always impeccable in this episode, but girl, you were killing it. I am firmly team of Matthew. I was already trending that way, but this episode solidified it. They did you wrong, girl. I understand that you were just trying to survive in this society, and sometimes survival means being complicit. You thought you were helping June, now she's being mean to you, but I thought that Ashley Lathorpe played all of those levels, the sadness, the bewilderment, the, becoming unhinged, all of that I thought she played beautifully. Also think she's just a beautiful woman with perfect teeth. Gilead must have some top-notch dental hygiene. We see people going to the doctor, but clearly they are, making sure everybody has those twice a year dental checkups. Also, did you see Brianna's face during the shame circle when they were shaming of Matthew? Girlfriend was vexed. Brianna only had a couple of moments in this episode, but again, I felt her rage. She was the one who spit in of Matthew's cup, which was way over the top. It was just a way over the top thing for the character to do, but I thought the actress who plays Brianna really sold it. Then we get into the Aunt Lydia flashback. Aunt Lydia is she's my second favorite character after Moira. I am a hypocrite because I have gone off on Serena Joy and all of the terrible, terrible things that she has done. Aunt Lydia has done things that are equally as terrible. I don't care. I am so into Ann Dowd. I think that she is an absolutely gorgeous woman. Every time I hear her speak in an interview, she is so thoughtful and open and humble and just lovely. She makes very intelligent choices as an actor. She was in my favorite ever episode of Law and Order. If I ever see her hanging out at a bar or a restaurant here in Toronto while they are filming, I'm not gonna bother her, but I will buy her an anonymous drink. Cheers to you, Ann Dowd. You are a national treasure. You are an international treasure. I think that you are wonderful. Not saying Aunt Lydia is an awesome human being. I'm just saying I love her. Don't care. We flash back. Aunt Lydia is Miss Clemens, fourth grade teacher. She's hanging out with a kid whose mom is late to pick him up. Ugh. Sorry, I am very scattered today and having a hard time concentrating. My ADHD is firing on all cylinders. I apologize that this review is probably gonna be a little all over the place. Anyway, there's a little boy and they're just, playing 20 questions. It's after hours, he's been left there, they're waiting for his mom. I love seeing Aunt Lydia in regular street clothes, hair down. I love how warm she was with Ryan, the little boy. Really, really enjoy when she has these moments of warmth and connection, be it, with this little boy or with the principal or in the present day Gilead with the handmaids. Oftentimes, again, especially this season, those moments don't really connect with the overall story or other parts of her character. I still enjoy seeing her play those, again, Ann Dowd, beautiful open face when she smiles and she's happy. She just radiates joy from the inside. If I take those moments sort of separately from the overall narrative of the story, I think they're wonderful. And I got a lot of those happy Aunt Lydia moments in this flashback. So I was happy. A lot of people seemed disappointed that we weren't given anything in this flashback to indicate that once upon a time, Aunt Lydia had an entirely different set of beliefs, that, she was possibly this, much more progressive, open-minded person. I actually liked that we still saw the seeds of the Aunt Lydia that we know from Gilead in Lydia Clemens. I think it actually makes a lot more sense that at her core, this is always who she's been, and if anything, Gilead has simply intensified certain elements of her personality, or maybe all of them, and she's become sort of more extreme and polarized, where when she's kind, she's extremely kind, and when she's cruel, she's extremely cruel and rigid and dogmatic. We also see that in the past, Aunt Lydia was great with kids, loved them, really connected with them, and we've seen that in present day Gilead, where it's like she's a completely different person when she's around babies and children. Back in present day Gilead, June has a conversation with Commander Lawrence. He tells her, doesn't know where Hannah is, stop asking. She just has this moment where, she's tense and she kind of digs her fingernails into the wall. And like I said, I was pissed at June pretty much this entire episode. Despite being pissed at her, I felt that if I had been this close to seeing my child who had been kidnapped and then they were just gone and I was back to square one, not knowing where they were, yeah, I would want to, knock down that house with my bare fist. Later, I assume it's the same evening, Sienna comes in, tells June the birthmobile is waiting, and June is, in her night clothes, hair down. I think it would make a lot more sense, now that we know Gilead has telephones, if the birthmobile called ahead so that the handmaids could be dressed and ready to go when the birthmobile came to pick them up. Like, the number of handmaids that are there, it's a couple dozen of them. If they have to go to every single house, wake up the handmaid, wait till she gets dressed, hair up, blah, blah, blah. She gets in the van and they go to the next stop. The baby's gonna be born by the time any of them get there. We get this beautiful overhead shot of Andy laboring and then all the women of Gilead around her, and they are grouped, you know, and we can see the different colors. The handmaids in red, the aunts in their brown green, and the wives in their blue. Killing it with the overhead shots this season, cinematographers, very well done. I hate the birthing ritual. I hate it, I hate it, I hate it. It's like a horrible, horrible, horrible nightmare of a play. I have questions of Andy's babies. It appears that it got the umbilical cord wrapped around its neck. I don't understand why they didn't even try to revive the baby. I don't understand why they hadn't taken her to a hospital or why there wasn't an OBGYN. This is further evidence of an ongoing theory I have that Gilead doesn't actually prioritize babies as much as they claim to. I think that, like a lot of oppressive regimes, Gilead took advantage of people's alarm about the fertility crisis to institute this totalitarian regime, because otherwise they wouldn't have women laboring in the house. They do that so that the wives, who are the elite women, can have this fantasy that these are their children, and they're prioritizing that fantasy over the well-being of these babies that they claim to love so much. I don't think Gilead cares about babies that much. We have another beautiful overhead shot. All of the handmaids come, they embrace of Andy, and it looks like they're forming heart. When June gets back to Commander Lawrence's, he asks her for a favor, wants her to spend more time with his wife because he thinks June is good for her. Okay. June is like, nah, you are killing your wife and you should send her away. Girlfriend is not just burning bridges, she's blowing them up. June, what are you doing? This is someone who can help you, and you're you're middle fingering this guy. That sounded really bad. You're giving this guy the middle finger. Writers, just give me a reason that I can understand why she's getting all of this leeway. In the scene at the Red Center where Aunt Lydia, Aunt Elizabeth, Aunt third person, whose name I don't know, and Aunt Lydia refers to one of the handmaids who's black as a handmaid of color. Love the character, but Aunt Lydia ain't woke. Probably a good interlude for me to address the racism. The lynching of a black woman and the shooting of a black woman are, yeah, they were very sensational and were simply used as plot devices, and the women who died, we knew nothing about them. Handmaid's Tale consistently has done that with their black characters and other characters of color. I talked a fair bit about it in my last recap of episode 7. I also did an in-depth discussion with the good doctors of Abbey Research over on their channel about race in The Handmaid's Tale in general. I'll link to the other videos, and then you will get a more coherent and, you know, more thoughtful critique of race. Then we flash back to Christmas. Lydia has invited Noelle and Ryan over. They're opening presents together. She gives Ryan a book and he hugs her and says, "Thank you, Aunt Lydia." And I was wondering if that was meant to signal that perhaps Lydia herself had come up with this idea of them being called aunts, or if it was just an ironic, ironic sort of comparison to her being called Aunt Lydia by this little boy because she loves him, he loves her. It's a more sort of familiar use of the word aunt, which usually that's what aunt is, as opposed to the way it's used in Gilead, where aunt is a title of authority and is a very intimidating kind of honorific. I heard some folks speculate that the scene where Noelle is putting makeup on Aunt Lydia and Aunt Lydia's kind of, she's really relaxing into it and watching Noelle, that there might have been some queer overtones there. I myself had said a few episodes ago that I maybe got a queer vibe from Aunt Lydia. I actually didn't get that from this scene. What I got was that Aunt Lydia is someone who's a bit touch deprived and just deprived of personal intimacy, and so that this was just a really nice moment where she had physical contact, like loving physical contact with another human being. Now I'm having camera issues. This was a challenging episode to watch, and it's a challenging episode to recap, apparently. Anyway, now we have Aunt Lydia in the club having her date. I am a sucker for a great romantic date scene. I wish I could have just lifted this scene out of the episode, out of this whole somewhat janky season, and had it as its own thing. I was so happy with this scene, I didn't even really mind the part where the principal pressures Lydia into coming up and doing karaoke, because that is a thing I really don't like in real life. Didn't mind it here because they were so cute. Oh, bravo. There you go, writers. You came through for me on this scene. Loved it. I want to talk about Aunt Lydia getting rejected and how that affected her. This was my read on what was happening. They start kissing, making out, and I think that Aunt Lydia is someone who has always or long believed that sexuality, expressing sexual feelings, certainly having sexual intimacy with another person has to happen within the confines of marriage. I suspect that Aunt Lydia, or Lydia Clemens, was someone who actually really enjoyed sexual intimacy. I suspect that she's been lonely for a really long time. People who try to sustain abstinence or celibacy simply by ignoring the fact that they still may be sexual human beings with sexual feelings sometimes fall into this trap that when sexual intimacy or sexual partnership is made available to them, they sort of don't know how to manage those really strong sexual urges, the strong arousal, the strong desire, because they don't think about it. And I think what happened in Aunt Lydia's case is that as soon as he told her to stop, that forced her to consciously confront the fact that she was being sexual. I don't think Lydia is a person who's ever learned how to be comfortable or accepting of her sexual feelings outside of sex within marriage, and possibly sex for procreation. Again, it was the shame cropping up. She is so ashamed that she has these feelings, and him saying something out loud makes her have to sit in those feelings, and she cannot bear that shame. You can have whatever sexual boundaries you want, including being celibate, but you having sexual feelings is still normal. The following scene where she's looking in the bathroom mirror, I think that mirror image represents the duality within Lydia. I think there's the part of Lydia that loves people, needs connection, needs intimacy, enjoys sex, is a sexual person. And then there is the person that she wants to be, who is very controlled and very rigid and lives in a world where everything is black and white and laid out. She's looking at her reflection, and the person in the reflection is Lydia Clemens, and the person looking in the mirror is Aunt Lydia. And it's like Aunt Lydia came in, and through smashing the mirror and smashing her own reflection, it's like she destroyed the part of her that was Lydia Clemens, so that all that remained, all that she was willing to accept of herself, is the person that we understand Aunt Lydia to be in Gilead. The next time we see Aunt Lydia in flashback, back at the school, we can already see the beginnings of Aunt Lydia. She is wearing, that aunt drab, brownish greenish sweater. The hair has come up, the makeup is off, even her feet are resting on a red circle. Lydia is so ashamed and so angry at herself that she will do anything not to have to take on responsibility for her own actions with the principal, and so in her head she has to make it Noelle's fault. Noelle is the one who persuaded her, who tempted her with the makeup by telling her that she should go out. And if Noelle is bad, then Noelle has to have her child taken away from her. And I think that's what motivated those actions. And Noelle is right. She probably wound up ruining Ryan's life and Noelle's life as well, because she was so afraid of the enormity of her shame. I have been talking forever. Let me wrap this up. Let's go to the final scene in the supermarket. Aunt Lydia is there and wants to talk to June about removing her from Commander Lawrence's home. Two things don't track for me here. One is, I don't think, and I've never gotten the impression that the aunts have authority over the commanders. Secondly, why do people keep having these very sensitive conversations in the middle of loaves and fishes? I never, ever, ever in the entire series seen Lydia meet someone at Loaves and Fishes, like meet a handmaid at Loaves and Fishes to discuss her situation. Anyway, Of Matthew pops off because June gives her a look and looks away, whatever, and starts beating Janine with a can. Hated this choice. First of all, it was, oh, here's this woman who's gone crazy, which plays into the women be crazy trope, plays into the Black people are erratic animals who will just go off for virtually no reason. Also, it felt really contrived. We'll have Of Matthew beat the tar out of Janine, who was the one person who was being nice to her, and just has this general childlike innocence, so that we can justify having her get shot and the audience will feel happy about it, or at least won't see it as a tragedy, because now Of Matthew is this monster. Then Of Matthew smashes the Guardian over the head with a jar, inadvertently kills him, picks up the gun. She's freaking out, she's pointing it everywhere, and then gets shot. I have watched the scene where she kind of flips in the air several times. The stunt woman they had, you can see her hands. It is a very, very pale white person. That was just silly. Oh yeah, and then we get her name. This time she didn't have to die. We found out her real name, which is Natalie, 3 seconds before she was gunned down. She's hauled off. Episode ends with another close-up on June's face. She's just looking smug and unmoved by the fact that her walking partner, as far as she knows, has just been killed. And then Que Sera starts playing. It tells me that the creators of the show think that watching a Black woman gunned down is thrilling. And as a Black woman, no, it's not thrilling for me. It's upsetting and it's scary. That is a fear that I carry around with me, is being shot by a police officer because I do the wrong thing or say the wrong thing. But I think of how many times I've heard a police officer who has shot a Black person say that, even though the Black person hadn't actively done anything or come at them, that they were afraid that the Black person would attack them or would try to kill them. This whole scene just played into that trope, and these are things that have real world consequences for us. Thank you for sticking with me throughout all of this and putting up with my scattered brain and my disorganized thoughts. As always, let me know what you thought of the episode in the comments below. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you soon. Bye.